Welcome to Kendra's Artistic Crochet Designs. And so we're continuing this learning to read patterns and learning how to do different things. Today we're going to learn how to tie ends down. So usually you just take an end, and I always want to make sure that these ends are long, and you will see why. You thread that on your tapestry needle. Okay. And it takes a couple of times sometimes. Get that through there. Okay. So you thread that on your tapestry needle, and you want to find a good place to, you're going to go in some of these stitches. I like to go down to these stitches right here. And about 4 or 5 of them. I go through about 4 or 5 of them. And then, where'd that come out? We want to go back through two or three times. So this is the first time we went through. So I'm going to skip this. I'm actually going to break into stitches. So I'm actually, and then going underneath these stitches. And then always loosen this afterwards. You do not want it too tight. But, you know, I'm going back through this thing a third time, skipping over stitches so it won't come back through. And then you cut off the excess. And that should not come out. That should not come out. So here's another one. So I just work my way down into these stitches here. And then I go right back through them. And then sometimes it's good to just go up into this stitch like here and make a loop and then go back down through it. I like to go through 3 times. That's why I make my ends longer. So that's how I turn I put my ends in. All right, so there is another. I'm going to get this off white yarn because this way you can see. There is something else I want to show you. How to sew things to squares together or whatever you've got here. So there are different ways that you can sew squares together. Okay, and I'm going to show you a few of them. When we did this last month, where the way we sewed them together was called the mattress stitch. So that's you guys know how to do that because I showed you that on the channel on how to sew those together. So you know the mattress stitch. There is something called a whip stitch. And you just thread it on a needle. And a whip stitch, you'll always put two right sides together. And you'll be looking at this from the back side. We just started our baby Afghan on Monday, and this is how we're going to be sewing them together once those strips together. But so you just sew. I always like to start out with a knot. And then I whip stitch this in. So you're just going to go through both stitches. I'm showing you with a different color so that you can see as well. We're just whip stitching, and this is called a whip stitch. So you just go through the stitches both for both squares, and you just whip stitch them. So you see, if you use green, you never see that. But anyway, this is a whip stitch. This is called a whip stitch. So you just whip stitch those together. And then you would just do that with all the way across until you're done. And it looks like this. But like I said, if you used a green yarn, you would never see that whip stitch. But anyway, I wanted to use a different color yarn so that you guys could see better. Alright, so we have the whip stitch. You can also crochet squares together. And there are different ways of doing that. Let me see. Let me remind myself here. Yeah, and I just did the whip stitch. And so you can also do a in and out stitch. Let's see, we just did the whip stitch, the back stitch. So you could do it this way too. So you could go in here, go up a few, go in between, and then you're going to go back and then come back in this way. So there's also what you call a back stitch. Too. So you could put them together that way too. Okay. When you crochet things together, you usually have a ridge. So you would put back sides together. And using a hook, put a slip knot on your hook. Now go into the corners and slip stitch into the corners. And then you could work over this tail as you go. You would go into the back loops. And this is called a slip stitch. So the back loop of the front square, or in my case I have hexagons. Oh, I forgot. You can't work over it in a slip stitch. Okay, so we could slip stitch these going in the back loops, slip stitching these together. I'm sorry. It's the back loop of the front and the front loop of the back is what you're going through. So it's the back loop of the front and the front loop of the back square. The back loop and the front loop. Back loop, front loop. So what that does is it creates a little ridge. And it creates a little ridge. Now you can slip stitch those together, or doing the same thing, you can single crochet them together as well. And that will create a little bigger ridge. And you see the difference where I did some slip stitches here and then I did a single crochet. And it creates a little bit of a ridge. You use the same color as like you would use the green, but you could still see the ridge on that. So that is a single crochet seam and a slip stitch seam. And that is all of the ways that we got a back stitch seam, a whip stitch seam, and the seam that I showed you how to, they call it a mattress stitch. So there's 5 different ways of sewing squares together, or whatever you want to sew together. Okay, so that will be it for today. I want to thank you guys for watching. Have a great day, and bye-bye now.